Why aren't you vegan yet?
Yeah, so the reason why I'm not vegan is because one, I feel like vegan comes with you have to have a certain means in order to fully commit to a vegan lifestyle, because that includes like your clothing, the type of products you use, the type of food you consume. All of those things have to be considered, in which I don't think that I've had the means to 100% commit to it, just because there's animal products in a lot of different things. I did grow up vegetarian for a little bit. That was really controversial, just because my family's from the South and my mom was like, I want her to be a vegetarian. And so I kind of grew up with a more interest of having like veggies and stuff on my palate. But I still do consume like chicken and turkey and fish. Not too much red meat. But yeah, I just feel like it's really, really expensive to really commit to a vegan lifestyle. And in some ways, I think that this push for veganism kind of stems from the exploitation of like animals. Like, I think that if we had a better relationship with the way that we fostered our meat and the way that we consumed animals and had more respect towards animals, and how we unalive them and then consume them, I don't think that the push for being vegan would be that pervasive, just because I think veganism stems from like wanting to be an ally with animals, but also like not wanting to consume meat. But since we don't have allyship with animals, and especially in America, we exploit them to, means we've never done before. I just think that if we remove that exploitation and had a better relationship with animals and the land, we wouldn't really have to commit to being vegan or even vegetarian. We would be able to consume meat in a justified way, that doesn't basically, do the way that we're doing it now. So that's kind of my stand.
What does that look like? How do you take someone's life from them without exploiting them?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. A lot of the beliefs that I have, and I've learned in terms of like consuming meat and stuff, in the Bible, it says that basically humans have dominion all over animals, everything on the earth, right? Whereas I grew up more like spiritual, and have more an animistic perspective. And I do think that everything does consume everything. If you look at the way animals interact with animals, they consume animals. I think that it's not necessarily unnatural for humans to consume animals.
Okay, you're not getting to what I asked you, though. You're talking about wild animals. I said, what does it look like for us to unalive someone that wanted to live without exploiting them?
Yeah, I think with animals, making sure that they're fed well, they're treated well, and making sure the way that we unalive them is not gruesome.
Do you know what exploitation means?
Well, exploitation, yeah, I think so. But what do you think it means?
It means to use someone unfairly.
Yeah, but if, like, for example, a lot of Inuits, Inuit tribes, like in Alaska, or a lot of indigenous tribes, for example, when they use beluga, when they catch beluga whales, they use all aspects of the meat, whether it's
okay, it's still not answering my question, though. I'm asking you, how are you going to take someone's life without exploiting them?
And I just said
they are still exploiting them. They're still using the animal unfairly. Yes, it's understandable for people living in extreme situations to do what they have to do. It's still immoral to take someone's life. Like animals are sentient. Life. Do you agree that animals are sentient and they feel pain?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so part of sentience is being able to feel feelings. You're able to express or to make you experience the world, and you have a preference of certain things. So it's a someone. They have preferences. They are individual.
Couldn't that argument also be made for plants, though? Of course, they don't feel in the same capacity as humans, but they do have a vibrational frequency. They are alive.
They don't have
a brain with them. But that doesn't mean that they're less valuable, right? Because they still contribute to our ecosystem.
I mean, okay, if we're talking about environment, but I'm talking about morally as far as as far as sentience goes. Plants are not morally the same as animals. They don't have a brain or a central nervous system, which is what's required to have feelings, to have experiences. And or plants just react to stimuli. They just chemically are responding to things. Humans and animals actually have preferences, so that's what makes
So
us
then,
different.
would you say that if an animal didn't have the brain or the nervous system, then it would be more justified?
Yeah, that's called lab grown meat.
Oh yeah, girl. I don't even believe in lab grown meat personally. But I don't know. That's just like the perspective I grew. I wouldn't consume anything that's grown in a lab. I mean, I wouldn't choose to do that. Of
Well,
course,
let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. A lab is sterilized. A farm is covered in poop, blood, urine, dirt. So, and when, especially if you actually were to go look at these animal products, they all have poop, dirt, urine all over them.
Yeah, but that's like natural. That doesn't bother me, right? Because we use poop to fertilize, our vegetables and grow
Okay.
them. But I think that
You don't need poop. You can use compost, plant composts.
But the point is that we do use it, right, as an option.
Because we have 92.2 billion animals that we unalive every year, and they make
In the
a
United
lot of
States?
poop. No, that's the whole world.
Okay.
But they all make a lot of poop. And actually, a lot of farmers feel that they're not even farmers for the animals. They're poop managers because they have so much poop and urine and other things that they have to manage. So we spray it on our fields because we can't do anything else with it. We have so much of it. If we didn't have to raise all these animals, we wouldn't have all this excess poop, and we could use plant fertilizers or like compost and compost teas and something called green manure, which is another type of compost.
Yeah, I mean, personally, just what I know about like the history, I'm going to stay within the context of the United States. I think we're the biggest country that has a really horrible relationship with meat and animals and the way that we, exploit them in terms of how we treat them, even before we unalive them for consumption. And I personally believe that veganism is a resort of colonialism rather than like a solution to the bigger
Actually,
problem.
most poor nations are mostly plant-based, and a lot of the
Wait, where did you get that from? What are you getting that from? Like coordination?
I mean, look it up. I don't
No,
have a
but
direct
but
study
my
right here.
statement, I made a statement and I said, I think that veganism is like a result of colonialism and it doesn't address the bigger issue, which is
Can you tell me why you
industrialization.
think it's colonialism?
Wait, but then you said, well, a lot of poor countries what? A lot of poor countries what?
Oh, are mostly plant-based already. Because those are the cheapest
Yeah.
foods to grow. To have animals is actually expensive. In the Western countries, we subsidize our meat. That's why it's affordable. You wouldn't really be able to afford it if it wasn't subsidized. Third world countries are often growing the grains even that we feed the animals that we then feed to people in the West.
So they like move the grains from their nation to us, and then we
Yeah,
give
because
back to the
that's
animal.
where they get money. Those are the money crops because there's so many animals.
Right.
To
So
feed.
then, in a way, you could say that the people who, even though they live in a plant-based society, they still benefit from some degree of our consumption of animals in the United States.
I wouldn't say they benefit since a lot of children
Financially.
are starving
Well,
right now.
financially.
So I think there's a lot of corruption in those countries too. So a lot of the money is not with the poor nation or the poor people of those countries. It's usually in the upper parts of their country. The people that you're worried about are often eating still more plant-based because, like I said, it's cheaper to eat plants.
Yeah.
To have an animal, you have to raise the plants for the animal, and then you have to eat the animal.
Right. And to answer your question, because you had asked me, why do I think that veganism is like almost like a product of colonialism? I would say pre-colonialism, you didn't have to. From what I know, my knowledge about like indigenous America before it was even colonized, and like West Africa, Caribbean, stuff like that, you didn't have to adopt a whole entire way of living to have like basic decency or respect for the land and the animals. Like they didn't have to say, oh, this is veganism and this is what we're deliberately not going to do. We're not going to exploit. We're not, because they didn't exploit to the degree that we do now. So when I say that I think that veganism is a result of colonialism, I think it's like because of how we've industrialized and how we have just really ruin the land, ruin the animals, ruin all of those things. Veganism is now like one of those quote unquote solutions to kind of get people back to not exploiting animals as much or not as doing whatever as much, but there's still a cost to it. So I don't want to sit up here and say that I don't think that veganism is bad. I don't think that's the problem, but I think that I wonder what the conversation would look like if we just treated animals differently and treated the land differently, and would there be more options for people to, you know, either be vegan or vegetarian and still consume meat without there being such dire consequences to the animals? So I think that everyone dies, everything unalive is unalive. It's a part of the natural cycle of life. But I just think the way we do it here is really, really, really crazy.
Okay. Did you know that most native people are moved out of their lands to make room for cattle farming?
Right, which is colonialism, though. That's a part of colonialism.
And what is that? Is that plant-based agriculture or is that animal agriculture?
Right, it's animal agriculture.
So colonialism is more about raising cattle. Would you not agree?
We're on the same page. I think you and I are on the same page because you just said, you know, people are
veganism specifically is not about anything else but not exploiting animals. But
wouldn't you say that veganism comes with a certain socioeconomic status? Because veganism is also saying that you can't wear certain clothes. You can't wear certain clothes. Like, well, why wouldn't it be? Could you explain why it's not?
I can if you let me. you talk for a very long time. Okay. So veganism is about recognizing that an animal is sentient and realizing you don't want to be a part of exploiting and using them anymore. If you had leather when you came across this epiphany, I wouldn't say that it's not vegan to wear that leather jacket because you had it before you went vegan. I personally wouldn't, because it does. Hold on. No, it's not, because you're not paying for more harm. The harm that you paid for has already been done. You've already paid for that jacket. If you were to go vegan and then buy a jacket, that is not vegan, because you're putting into that demand after you've just realized, oh my gosh, animals are sentient and I don't want to harm them. Do you see the difference?
I definitely do, but I do think that you can't just not, like, you have animal products, you're not 100% vegan, period. Like the definition is a person. That's not what definition of a vegan is a person who does not eat food derived from animals or who typically does not use animal products.
I mean, I know you're reading that out of a dictionary, but if you talk to any actual animal rights activist vegans, they're going to tell you that's not what veganism is. Veganism is not about being perfect. It's not about not using something. It's about not putting in the demand and not exploiting someone. So I'm not going to pay somebody else to exploit and oppress somebody. I'm also not going to exploit and oppress somebody myself. So I'm not going to pay for leather I'm not going to pay for someone's flesh. I'm not going to pay for cosmetics that were rubbed in someone's eye. You know, I will pay attention to that, but not because I have to, because it's not a religion. Veganism is about,
it's a choice,
movement.
Right?
It's a rights movement. It's kind of similar to how people fought for rights in any other movement. We recognize that somebody is being oppressed that is equal in the sense that they feel pain and are sentient, and we believe that their rights are being ignored. So using somebody is immoral because, you know, they have their own purposes, and just because animals aren't as intelligent as us doesn't give us a moral justification to enslave them.
Yeah, whoa, enslaving is crazy. But I would say that I think there's some things I do agree with, but I do think still, like, if it wasn't for industrialization, if it wasn't for the exploitation of the land,
I don't care about how nicely you exploit somebody. It's not about welfarism. I don't care about how big their cages are. I don't want animals to be exploited at all out of principle, not because I'm trying to make the world greener. That's something else. Veganism is purely about abolition of animal exploitation. That is it.
Okay, cool. So then would you say that people prior to right? Because it seems like you're pretty, you seem very educated, right? Would you say
I try to
that
be, but
veganism prior to industrialization and all those different things, like, would you still say that those people way back then should still be vegan, or would you say that they shouldn't be using animal products or anything of the animal, right? Because when you think about
it's
people
not
from
about,
back
again,
then,
you
I
keep
just
going
wanted
back
to,
to perfectionism. No, I don't. You just talk so much. I'm just going to mute you for a second. It's not about perfection. It's about the perspective of seeing a sentient being and not wanting to pay for their oppression. If you found out that a product you really loved was made, had to be made, there's no way around it. It had to be made. It was a crucial ingredient. Somebody had to be oppressed and exploited. Would you not stop buying that product? That's all it is. It's literally finding out that an animal is exploited. They're unalive when they don't want to be. Their bodily autonomy is violated without their consent, and I don't want to pay for that. That's all what veganism is. Animal rights activism, what I'm doing right now, is separate from that, where I'm asking other people, hey, if you have similar principles, you probably will agree that you shouldn't, like, why not extend the same understanding to animals? They feel
yeah.
pain, they don't want to die.
So did you want me to answer your question, or was that like a...
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I feel like, can you actually just ask a question? I kind of got lost in what you were saying.
That's okay. Basically, what I'm saying is, what gives you the moral, not anybody else in the world, I'm talking to you. What gives you specifically, yeah. What gives you the moral justification to use somebody else's body when they cannot consent to their treatment?
I mean, that's not what I've done, and I haven't done that, so I actually...
If you pay or use animals, that is what you're doing. If you pay or use animals, that is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before I got on this live, I don't really consume too much meat on my day-to-day basis, and when I do, I mean, like,
the animals are only a little bit dead, right?
Turkey, stuff like that. And that's because that's what I've needed to support my vitamins and my nutrients from what my doctor told me.
You can thrive on a vegan diet. Humans can thrive biologically on a vegan diet.
So would you say that veganism is like a bit superior then to the other ways of consuming?
Morally, yes.
That's interesting. I don't know. I think
how can it ever be moral to take someone's life? Moral, not justified, right, but moral.
With that argument, I agree with, because I apply that, I use an iPhone, and right now what's going on in Congo isn't even being addressed, right? So, like, right. I totally understand that exploitation isn't good, and I totally understand.
But see, the difference with the phone and your food, though, is that how often do you buy electronics versus how often do you participate in animal agriculture? But how many times are you exploiting animals a day?
Okay, that's a little contradictory, right? Because you're talking about thresholds, right? I just talked about.
No, I'm just trying to make a point. I'm trying to make a point that veganism is more effective than not buying a cell phone.
So then it's okay to exploit humans. Because you don't.
That's not what I said. No. You misunderstood. I'm not saying it's avoid phone or go vegan. I'm saying you could do both, but veganism is going to have a bigger effect than you just not buying cell phones. Not buying cell phones from an unethical place, absolutely respectable. That is moral. I agree with that. But I'm just trying to make the point that how often do you buy a phone? Like, you're only going to be effective in that fight maybe once or twice a year, or once a year, maybe once every 2 years. But I think that the whereas you eat animals maybe 3 times a day.
And I use my phone.
No. But you eat. But you don't buy your phone every day, right? You don't buy an electronic every day. Do you buy electronics every day?
Now you're honing in on whether or not. I think that's a bit disingenuous. I'm actually going to just
again. Hold on.
And I think that's
you can hop down if you want.
Like privilege or something.
Well, I'm sad that we couldn't keep talking. You have a great day. My point was, it wasn't that you shouldn't care about human oppression. You should absolutely. In fact, a lot of people come to veganism through fighting for other human oppression. They're fighting for humans. They find that they're making the same arguments that a vegan does for animals. They go, hey, you know what? I'm not going to exploit and hurt animals anymore because that's unnecessary, just like it's unnecessary to be homophobic, racist, I can't think of another one, but, just all of those sorts of things.